This is part 4, talking about spirit, ego, and the soul and how they all interact. This video is going to be more heavily focused on my current understandings of what the spirit is. And I'm going to be sharing my ideas, which I feel confident about, but many of the others I'm still building upon. My answers may be wrong, but my questions are most definitely right. I think this line of questioning is very useful, practical, and it is morally good. It needs to be asked to get the right answers. So I'm going to be sharing descriptions of what I think spirit is based on via my own introspection and extrospection. I'm going to be sharing how I currently believe the interaction between these different elements of spirit, mind, ego, will, focus, how that all appears to function. I'm going to be talking more about consciousness and how that develops in a future video. I have shared my exposition, my formalization and definition, understanding of consciousness in those prior videos. More so in part 1 and 2, how consciousness is a relationship between an ego subject and all other objects in existence. But I'll go into more detail in a future video about that specifically. I've got more questions about the form and nature of spirit in contrast to those different elements, and especially the void. And I'm going to touch a little bit more on ego, some more insights I've picked up since the last video. So essentially this is an exposition on spirit. It is not a definitive one, definitely not. So I got a few updates about void, mind space, soul is the entire container, more descriptors for ego to say that ego is the psyche, it's your character, it's your identity, it's your sense of self, the I, the me, that is different ways to express, which are essentially the same thing with ego. You could say it's a combination of your intellectual and emotional side, your ego. Another cool way to express what the ego is, it's your pattern. It's like a code. If you view, just think of the matrix screen, that black background with the green code. The black background could be your mind space, that is the space where the ego, all that code exists. Because in a way, everything is just a pattern, an expression of different colors. You could think of it, I'm not saying that's exactly what everything is, but it definitely is in a virtual world. When you're looking at the computer screen, you have all these black pixels, but when they're turned on, they illuminate with color. What is color? Saturation, hue, and brightness. And it can give the illusion of depth, of size. It can recreate. You're looking at a video of me, but it's just pixels. It's not actually me, but it's so lifelike, the representation, the simulacrum via this technology. It's fantastic. But it's just all these tiny little pixels, and you're going to see me clearer the higher your resolution. The image of me you're seeing is a pattern. You know, right now I just changed the pattern. You can't see my face because I put a different pattern, the pattern of my hands, over my face. It changes the way I look. A way to think about ego, it's the pattern of your experiences, your memories, your knowledge, your concepts, your likes, your dislikes. It's a specific pattern. Perhaps one day with the right amount of knowledge and technology, you could build it in a way. Your ego, you could map it out almost like an AI model, something like that, where it's just a rearrangement of all these different patterns of your body at this time, doing this thing, feeling and thinking this way, all a different arrangement of pattern, almost like a record player, but obviously a much, much more advanced and complex version. You have the record, it's got all the different grooves on it, and the spindle goes over and it plays a particular song. This song or that song, depending upon the pattern. More advanced is the pattern on a laser CD or DVD disc, Blu-ray, and then you have these different patterns of electricity which store different bits and bytes of files of zeros and ones on a USB stick, on hard drives, on SSDs. Just an interesting way to think about it. It's like that patterned code, the code which is you. It's a way to think about it. I don't know how exact or accurate this is to the reality. To say that for sure, you'd need a lot more information, a lot more time. That would be a very difficult thing. This is more of a philosophical interpretation of what ego and spirit is, rather than a scientific example or display, exposition. But whenever there's a pattern, there needs to be somewhere for that pattern to be expressed. So I'll be touching on that a bit more later. And you could say this is a metaphysical, ontological, and phenomenological exposition. I really like that word today, exposition, or sharing, summarization on this topic. You could summarize metaphysically, or perhaps that would be ontologically. Those two tend to overlap. What there is: presence, spirit as presence, space, and pattern. So before I expand on that, metaphysics is essentially the study of reality, the universe as a whole. It's saying what is there, what exists. Ontology is saying, how do we classify and categorize what exists? What is there and what is it? Because metaphysically you could say spirit exists, and then you say ontologically, what is spirit? Metaphysically, reality exists. Ontologically, well, what is reality? How do you break that up? Metaphysics, existence exists. You have the axioms. Everything has an identity, the law of identity. It's governed by and bound by logic. And then consciousness. We're conscious of it. Then you say ontologically, well, what is consciousness? How do you classify that? What is identity? How do entities and causality fit into that? For example, the metaphysical view I'm presenting is spirit existing as a real principle of awareness. You could frame it like that. Ontology is that spirit is a kind of being, in a way you could frame it, perhaps as a field or a faculty or a substance or an essence. That's difficult to precisely articulate. That's why I'm asking these questions. And phenomenology is basically the study of experience, of reality as it appears to someone's first person experience. And you could say that's introspection, the way the world, everything appears to you in your experience. So I'm integrating them all and trying to be as objective as possible in my identification and explanation of these topics. In the sense of phenomenology, spirit is how presence feels. It's that direct sense of I am, the witnessing, the luminous awareness in experience. So to summarize, you could say metaphysics is what is real, ontology is what is it, what kind or mode of being are the things that exist, and phenomenology is how is it experienced. I understand if you're not familiar with those terms, that's probably not going to help too much. To grasp them would probably take you years, but that's okay. You've got to start somewhere. So I think spirit, my starting descriptions, as I have shared in the previous videos, but I'm going to make more explicit now, is the presence. I'm really liking that description of it. It's the presence, the witnesser, the I, as in the I that watches, and the I that eventually forms a sense of self. It's the observer. It's the illuminator. It's that point of focus, that point of attention. And so my current perspective and integrative overview is that your essence is your spirit and your substance is your ego. So you essentially need to have that spirit for the ego to be molded onto it. If there's no spirit, there's nowhere for the ego to be connected to. Because you can't really say, you could say a ChatGPT bot, an AI, has an artificial ego, has an artificial personality and character, how they program it to be cynical or to be supportive, to be robotic and factual or charismatic. But I mean, these are good analogies to draw and to contrast against with AI, with these chatbots, how they are now and definitely how they will be in the future, to really contrast. Because you think, with the most advanced technology, say in 100 billion years, could AI ever become like us? That's very interesting. If it appears even more human-like, is it just because it knows how to simulate and emulate and recreate what we are, but just do it better, but there's still no spiritual presence there? It just gives the appearance, and it's very deceiving, and could be mistakenly believed to have a presence of the way it behaves. Interesting question. I'm not sure of the answer yet, but it is a question that is right. It's the right question to be asking. The answers, well, they will come with time. It does seem that a presence, a spirit, requires the ego to become self-aware, to move from a presence to an observer, to an awareness, to a conscious, individuated sovereign being. Well, a sovereign being, currently a man, because it's not entirely accurate to just say being. You have to say being what? That is a different topic. That links into law, actually. I'll tell you another time. That's why if AI never gets out of the computer, it seems very unlikely that it ever become conscious. If it gets a body, that makes it much more possible that it could become conscious, because you need to move. There's all these constituent elements of how we came to be conscious, going through babies and growing up through different phases, which I'll explain in a future consciousness video. The body aids with an automatic, reactionary and deterministic learning system, and over time this forms the construction of an ego. And when the ego becomes conscious, someone can now be said to be truly alive. As I said earlier, I think the ego, what that is everything that you can remember. Well, in your conscious, subconscious and unconscious. So obviously things that you can't remember as well, unless you go through some kind of specific technique or method, or maybe you just can't remember at all with this body and brain. But it's those experiences, how they've affected you, even if you can't remember, the programs that you've taken away, the things that you've accepted through social conditioning. It's your knowledge, it's all the data, the information that you have and you hold and you view as true, untrue, doesn't matter, irrelevant, inconsequential, your desires, your choices, ambitions, your MPJ, your metaphysical psychological judgment of status and self. That is a new thing I am formalizing at the moment. It's all this information. It's not just arrogance or pride. Like mainstream try to take this enormous, absolutely enormous thing, us, our characters, our personalities, our beingness, our sense of self, our ego, our psyche, and they try to totally conflate, equivocate, and just dissect it. I need to come up with a new concept of exactly what they're doing. It's a reduction, a subtraction and a reduction. They look at this whole big thing of ego, which pride and arrogance and guilt and shame and happiness and love, all these things are qualities or relationships, attributes, actions of the entity called an ego with specific identity. And they just say, oh, the ego is just this one thing. It's like having this video of me you can see and saying, I am just this little pimple here. I'm just this part here. So, well, that's part of me, but that's just a tiny part. And it's the worst part as well. Why are you focusing on that and saying James is just an ugly, little pimple? That's what Eckhart Tolle, Ryan Holiday, these people are doing. They're taking ego and just picking up the absolute worst part, but saying it's the whole thing. That's a good way to explain it, actually. So it's what is known and unknown of the self's identity. What has been conscious identification, acceptance, approval, disapproval, and what has been subconscious, vice versa, all those words. By internal choice or external programming influence. The more conscious one is, the more of themselves they know. The more they understand why they do the good things that they do and why they do the bad things that they do. Consciousness is this huge continuum, this spectrum. They control the light of their awareness or their presence to view all aspects of their nature. They introspect their patterns, their form, and observe their metastructure. So it's like when you sit down and you meditate, or you're just lying in bed thinking, and you're watching your thoughts and seeing what they come up and seeing what arises. It's like if you want to look at your eye, you need to stand in front of a mirror or come really close to a camera like this to see my eye. If you want to see who you are, your ego, your mind, well, you need to close your eyes and see what thoughts come up. What happens inside your mind? Although it's a little bit different to your eye, because when you look at your eye, you can see the whole thing. Well, but then again, you need to be trained as an iridologist. I can look at my eye, but I don't really know what it all means, all these different patterns in the eye. When you're watching your thoughts, well, that's the start. If you want to know if you've got dirt in your eye, or if, there's a nail sticking out of it or something, feel, look in the mirror. Same with your mind. If you want to know your character, start looking. What's coming up? What is arising? What's happening inside your mind? How are you feeling? That's how you get to know yourself objectively. You can look at all that and then you can identify, or you can step back from a meta perspective and you can just watch them and say, this is interesting. I've observed what happens is I'll give myself the command, no thoughts to enter, but then thoughts enter. Okay, that's interesting. What's happening there? So there's a volitional and a deterministic element of me. The volitional is the conscious, you could say the present spirit part of myself, but then the meshed integration of my presence, of my spirit, into this ego, which is in a mind, which is in a brain, which is in a body, which is in a world. It's a funny way to think of it. This is like a simulation avatar in a way, a biological human. And you can also recognize through that meta-awareness of your own cognition and your own aliveness, your beingness. You can recognize when I've said I don't want any thoughts to come into my mind, they still do. The subconscious is always trying to put information into the conscious mind, the conscious layer. You have these two layers, and maybe it's even coming from unconscious to subconscious up to conscious, and you're saying, no, I don't want that. And you could put a temporary barrier there, but it doesn't last for too long because thoughts come through. Oh, yes, I was successful in keeping my mind clear of thoughts. Oh, no, there's a thought. And then you could dismiss it. Being conscious again. Dismiss. Oh, blank, calm. Oh, thought comes up. Oh, blank, calm. Oh, thought comes up. And then what you'll notice as well is that you'll get sucked into a chain of thoughts. Oh, yeah, I really like that girl. Oh, yeah, I wonder what she's doing. What am I going to say next? And then you're like 10 minutes deep into it and you're like, oh, holy crap, I was right in. That just happened. Oh, wow. I was present, I was conscious, but I just got sucked into this chain of thinking. And then that's like a meta recognition. Oh, that's something, how my mind works. That can happen. So that links into consciousness. That's part of your ego, how your ego is operating as like this software, this code of what you actually are as a independent individual, and how these thoughts can, and your ego can take your spirit along for the ride, but then what you can do with your ego as well, depending on how you train yourself. Because if you're a rider on a horse, you train the horse, but you need to be trained as a rider as well. So if you view spirit as the horse, loose analogy, you are the rider, you can direct the horse where you want to go. As the ego, you can direct the light of your consciousness, of your presence, where you want to go. You say, I want to be still in my mind and just meditate on that blankness. or I want to think about a specific task, making this video. What am I going to have for dinner? What am I going to say to her? You can focus, you can ride the horse in that direction and go along that path. But when you let go of the reins, the spirit is just, the presence, the focus is just going to wander wherever it wants to go. That links back into willpower. Whatever willpower is exactly, it is a power you have to control your spirit, your focus. And focus is the scope and the intensity. How much concentrative power, how much attention do you have right now? Are you 100% focused? Are you listening to this in the background while you're doing something else? So your spirit is only half listening if it's not 100%. So how intense is that focus? And what is the scope? Right now, if you're listening to this, your scope is on here. But if you allow yourself to drift, your scope changes. Where that focus goes, you start thinking about something else. I might say something that triggers you to think and the intensity is still there, but it's shifted over to a different scope. There's a lot more that could be said about that too. About how narrow or wide your scope is. When you're thinking about, should I vote in the next election, your scope is very narrow, has no grasp of the way things actually work. It's just a belief based on subjective feelings and imaginations and apathy, and on an MPJ, a metaphysical psychological judgment you've made on yourself as incompetent to be able to understand reality. So you say, I'm not sovereign, I am servile, let someone else take control. So the scope is very narrow. But when you say, no, I'm sovereign, I'm rational, reality is understandable, I can understand it, I am worthy of knowledge, and I have the power to do that, the scope changes. Voting in the next election? Why the hell would I do that? I'm not evil. And someone who doesn't understand all those things, how do you make that connection? Voting evil? What? How does that make sense? Because their scope is so tiny. It's like if all you saw was this. They're like, what do you mean that's attached to a man? All I see is just this pimple thing here. That's all I see. It's like, well, the scope is too small. It's too narrow. It needs to be wider. You know, if you see here, you're like, what is that? If I cover the whole camera, you go, what is that? You can't tell. But then you bring it back, you're like, oh, I start to see what it is. It's a hand, and it's attached to an arm, it's attached to a man. Oh, okay, it makes sense. The scope is wider now. You need more information. You need a bigger ego, because your ego is built upon your knowledge. You have no knowledge, no memories, there is no ego. Men in Black, this is closest, lip balm, flash, forget everything. There's no more ego. There can be a spiritual presence still in your brain and in your body, connected and meshed here because a biological avatar. The body hasn't died, but the ego is gone. That's been killed, mind wiped. All the memories and knowledge gone. All the experiences gone. So there's a spiritual presence, but it's not going to be conscious anymore. It was only conscious because of the ego. You'd be back to a baby. You'd fall over, start crying. I don't know what to do. And you've got to go through that whole evolution of consciousness again. When you're doing that phenomenological research, introspecting into yourself, you'll see what just is in of itself, the way, thoughts just come up, okay? And then what you can control. If I focus my spirit, my intensity on that blankness more, I use different strategies, techniques, reframe my ego's psychological perspective. I can stay in that space of not thinking thoughts for longer and not identifying or being sucked into wanting to engage and interact with them. Okay. So you can figure out what's deterministic and what's volitional. That's super important to be able to recognize the difference. It's almost like if you cannot recognize the difference, you're not even real, you're not conscious. Just an AI. If you cannot recognize the difference between what is deterministic, what is necessary, and what is not, well, there's a big problem there. So I'll say now, it also appeared like Ryan Holiday, Eckhart Tolle, those other gurus, they would talk about ego and not just mean arrogance, but also pride. That's what I think they were referring it to as. And which is obviously a huge disrespect of pride, as I explained in the previous video what pride is about. It's not just wrong, It's confusing. It's impractical. It's damaging and dangerous to talk about anything like that. It's like you've got a child and you're trying to teach them the concept of what a toothbrush is. But you tell them the toothbrush, sometimes we call it the toothbrush, sometimes we call it the toilet brush, sometimes we call it a paper towel, sometimes a tea towel, sometimes a napkin. They'll just be so confused. It's this one thing, the toothbrush, but why have you got all these different names here and different uses? Not the best analogy, but it's something. It's just this irrational formulation and use of the term ego. Whenever I come up with a better way to explain that, I will. So next is, what is the form of spirit? These are just guesswork questions. Is the spirit an individual mind? Well, I don't think it really is a mind, because I think a spirit must exist in a mind, but the mind is different to the spirit. I think the spirit is where a mind has to exist. Like, the mind is the space, and the spirit is the presence in the space. There's something that inhabits that space, because you just close your eyes, cut out all the light, and you're like, well, I can see my mind. I mean, you can even see your mind with your eyes open. It's not as vivid and popping and intense like this world. You imagine the little black kitten with the red bow. You can see that, but it's not like seeing it out here. The spirit was the one that created that, but where did it create it? Oh, in the mental space. That's the mind. So I'll still ask the question, is the spirit an individual mind that exists embodied in a host or disembodied in a mind space? Is spirit part of an undivided, omnipresent field that's here right now and prior to being here? Is that what spirit is? The monad. There's only one thing in all of existence, and it is spirit. And everything we see here is just a different expression of spirit. I don't think that's the case, but it's still interesting to be asked. And it's a different formulation of Thales, the ancient Greek philosopher, who was a hydromonist. And he said everything is just one thing, and that one thing is water. So another way to frame that is spirit just that one big chunk of something, which is then divided into parts? It's split up, and it becomes me, it becomes you, but we're still part of that same whole spirit, of that whole field of spiritual presence and awareness. Is that how it works? Mine is the same as yours, just with different egos. But when we die and we return to the void, it's all just merging into one void, one spiritual spirit world. Is that how it works? I'd say probably not, but it's hard to really say. But it seems unlikely it works like that. Is spirit individual minds or presences and minds as a connected, integrated unit that have always existed as their own mindscape and universe builders, and have always been creating souls for eternity, and this is just the latest expression of it? Is that how it is? Or is the one spirit in the void, has it been creating souls for eternity? Is that how it works? Do we have a personal timeline of spirit? Do we exist as individual spirits in an individual void in some layer of reality? And there's lots or potentially infinite of these different void spaces, and a void just seems to be a mental representation or actuality of a world. Perhaps when I say the void, I'm talking about that place of existence where people go to when they die and they experience, which is vastly different from the astral dimension. It's like closing your eyes, being in your mind, but a full encompassing intense experience, just like this is a full encompassing intense experience living in this world. They say it's like that, but much more intense than just being alive here like this. If you want to know more about that topic, I made a video talking about the commonalities, the similarities between people who visit the astral dimension, the void, the light. I've got a whole video about that, and then there's playlist with heaps of people talking about their actual testimonies. So do we have a personal timeline, an eternal history? That's a different topic and video, the concept of eternity and infinite regress in time, an open continuum, very interesting, but it seems to be the most logical answer for existence itself, how we're actually here. So do we have a personal timeline, or is it the timeline of the one God kind of spirit being? Or are we new souls, new spirits? Is there some spirit world up there and it's like a black cloud and it just spits out individual spirits, like raindrops? And these individual spirits come formed with a soul. So the spirit comes from the great spirit, and the great spirit doesn't have a soul. It's just a great spirit, a unidentified, egoless non-being, but it's just a potential field of awareness, and it shoots it out into the cosmos somewhere as souls in these different dimensions. I mean, some people do describe experiences similar to this. And then we go through a process of incarnating down on Earth, getting a body, and then actually becoming conscious properly with an ego. Another way to think of it, like, is spirit an impersonal force? Is it a separate individual aspect of reality, presence, essence of what we are? Just as me and you are completely separate, different beings, is spirit ourselves, the essence of what we are, is it fundamentally different from me and fundamentally different to you? Is the closest way we're similar from our bodies? That I have a male body, you have a male or female human body. Is that the most similar way? Or is spirit still individual and we're all completely individual spirits, but it's still the same thing? Just like, well, it's still a man's body. You might be a completely different man. You might be an evil man, a good man, my friend and my enemy, but you're still a man. Still a woman, part of the same human biological species. A spirit, yes, we got completely different spirits, but they're still spirit. Presence, awareness. It's not, well, I was going to say it's not that complicated. I think once you got enough information, it won't be that complicated, but at this point when you're trying to figure it out, it seems quite complex. But at some point in the far future, it'll probably be like, oh yeah, okay, that's pretty simple. Yeah, there's much more complicated things than just understanding spirit. Perhaps. When people visit the void, they describe their experience very differently. A lot of the time they say they were everyone or everything and nothing at the same time. Similar to the experience of, if I just sit here and blank out my eyes, I'm witnessing everything in general, but nothing in particular. It's only when I focus, look at my face on the screen, or I look at the camera, I look out the window, then I'm focusing, oh, now I'm that thing. I'm James, I'm this person, I'm this person. It's kind of like when they are in the void, they're not a particular individual being anymore. They've got a different mode of existence, but it's not a life. It doesn't really sound like life. It sounds like a different type of existence, but it's not life like this. Very different. So it's like how spirit and presence, they still had in a way a sense of individuality. You know, they come back to tell the story and they're the one with the memory of that experience, not me, not you. They experienced that. It's in their mind, which, I mean, is another piece of evidence which is showing separation. We're not the same. We're not connected. We're different. Is spirit more part of the environment? Is it more like a force of nature? It's hard to really know. Is spirit this force of nature that can be harvested by other people or aliens with the right technology? Is it some kind of resource like that? Is that how it works? Next, well, what about spirit as a description? Describing spirit as a faculty. This is a different way to perceive spirit. Does spirit only describe the function and faculty of a soul, which is to be conscious as the present willed actor. You could also look at it from a materialistic point of view. If everything is matter, say theoretically, is spirit just the emerging result, a faculty that rises from a particular integration, a particular pattern of brain matter and body and electricity and water and all this stuff? Is that what we're calling spirit? We're thinking it's spiritual, but it's just very secular, very of this world. It's another way to ponder. And if you're saying, no, it's not, well, you need to say, well, why is it not? I mean, we've got all the evidence of people experiencing existence or life, or both, outside of the biological body. So that's pretty good evidence. And the result of that particular formation of patterns, it could be matter, it could be light, or it could be mind, it could be will, it could be concepts. Keeping that all open-ended for now, is the soul, which is what I'm calling as the integration of spiritual faculty, that awareness and capability of consciousness, because I think it has to have an ego before it can become conscious. The integration of the spirit, physical body, it could even be a light body, as described in Astral Dimension Travels. People have a body, it's just not a physical body. It seems like a more real body in a way. But really, this biological body does seem more computer-like, simulation. Because if you think about it, if we are here right now and someone builds a metaverse, the 13th floor, the Matrix, different simulation movies, we go into a different vessel. Now our spirit, our ego, our consciousness is in a different body, in a different world. Where we jump out of that, we come back here. If we jump out of this, we go back into a light body. And a light body seems more like a more pure integration of just spirit and mind. It doesn't seem like a physical body is necessary for existence. An awareness, a spirit, and a mind, they seem like you can't get away with that. Even though so many people in this world seem to live as if they don't have either of those things, well, that's the whole NPC debate. But anyway, let's move on from there. Is that all we could ever be? You know, I say all, but I think at the same time, when you go into those different dimensions, you have the ability to transform. That's what people say. You can be different things. But what I mean specifically by that is that you can't actually be spirit by itself. You have to be spirit as something. Like, you can't be a human being. There's no such thing as a human being. There's men or women, or there's humans. You can be a human being, a man. You could have a human being, a person, as an artificial construct. That's why the law is structured like that. It's an unfinished sentence. It's imprecise lexical artificiality or pseudoness. But that's my theory, that you can't actually be spirit by itself. A spirit is not an individual entity being thing. Perhaps spirit is the faculty of awareness itself. And to become conscious, self-aware, it needs to be meshed into a host soul, and a soul perhaps being a mental force of nature which captures and channels spirit through an ego identity and a body. And we have overwhelming evidence to suggest that when the body dies, the soul continues, which is that spiritual awareness and ego, absent physical body. See, a lot of this, I'm just speculating. I want to have a record of my ideas so in the future I can look back and compare and see where I'm at today. Because to understand this in totality, you need a lot of science, So what I'm doing is asking the right questions, sharing the phenomenological perspective of what we're actually experiencing, or at least what I am, what I feel, what I see, what I can be certain of, and then speculating about the actual ontology of what these things are. How do you classify them? What actually are they, these different things? Are they processes? Are they actions? Are they relationships? Is it an entity? What is the identity of what I'm trying to describe here as spirit? I think ego is a lot easier to explain. That seems simple in comparison to what spirit is. and how they all interact and exist not just in this world but beyond this world. What are their origins? Where do they return? Etc. That's the more difficult topics to really figure out. So when a baby is born, it's without a formed ego. It observes without knowing it's observing. Focus or spirit is shifted by reflex. It's controlled by the deterministic processes of the baby's body. Instinct, reflex, impulse, automatic processes. You could say it's base, or it's determined, it's primal, it's prepared, pre-installed intelligence, as opposed to having the learnt intelligence when it becomes older as an adult. That will be continued in the consciousness video. So I think your ego is hosted in your particular mind. That's where it is. It's connected to your mind. Your specific spirit, your essence, is channeled into a soul container holding your spiritual light. It's another way to put it, which illuminates a layer of reality. The world, your mind space, your internal operations, processes, data points, knowledge. It's like that spirit is the light which you can shine. You can direct that focus. Think of it as the torch. You can shine it and then you can see. I can't see right now 15 years ago what I was doing. But if I really get that torch and really shine, and I have to think about that, I just can't know. I have to go, well, how old am I now? How old would have I been then? What was I doing then? Can I just remember off the top of my head? But I can do that. I can shine that focus there and take it out of the present moment and move that spirit, move that presence, move that illuminating beacon of awareness. It's like the ego has this joystick which controls the spirit. There's lots of different ways to explain it. I just thought of an analogy then. You could say a laptop is the spirit and the world. I, as the ego, am sitting behind the laptop and I've got the mouse and I've got the keyboard. I can change what happens on the screen, which is the conscious present moment, which is the spirit. And the world and all the other underlying biology and hardware and body, etc., is the laptop components, the hard drive, the RAM, and all that stuff. And the screen itself is the spirit, what's illuminating on the screen. And I, as the ego, can change what's on the screen. Say if you're on a YouTube screen and there's all these recommendations, it's like the subconscious putting all these things into the conscious mind or the subconscious. And the ego can get distracted and go, oh, I wanted to do this thing, or I just wanted to just look at the screen and do nothing for a moment. Oh, but this video, Beavis and Butthead, whatever other silly thing you're watching, you can get taken down a rabbit hole or a path that you didn't initially intend. It's an interesting way to consider. Also use that same laptop metaphor to say that, again, spirit is what's being displayed on the screen, but the mind is the space where all the parts are. The soul is the entire encompassing unit. The body is like the hardware, and you could say the ego is the software. The files that you have, Linux or Windows. The mind, you could also say, is perhaps that underlying kernel system and how the patterns of CPU and hard drive, how they all connect electrically. It's like the space where all that happens. And the laptop is just the current form. It's like the man is just the current form of the soul, but the soul has the ability to be a reptilian, a woman, a grey alien, a mantid, something else, an orc, an elf, whatever. The soul can change shape, but right now it's a laptop, it's a man. The spirit is whatever is on the screen. If you're not even having a user behind the screen, just a laptop by itself, you can analogize and think of it differently. Whatever works for you to try and understand it. As you can see, I'm using lots of different things to try and understand it, to see what's a good analogy, what's a bad one. And I'm sure you're probably sitting there saying, that one was crap, that one's better. Use your own discernment. I think the mind is the space where the ego exists and where the spirit watches it, where the spirit can watch the ego and then identify with it, and where it can watch everything else. when it's a baby, the spiritual light follows the feelings and whatever things are going in front automatically without any free will behind it. And if I do this to you, you can choose to follow my finger. When you're younger, you probably just do it automatically. Again, lots of science needs to go into explaining that. The ego operating in the mind space or mindscape can direct and redirect that focus. Sometimes the focus runs on its own like a wild horse, following the thoughts generated via the subconscious. Other times, or hopefully most of the time, your ego, direct your focus in the present to what you want to be thinking about and doing. Your subconscious layer of ego provides offers or options. Here, think about this. Think about this. And your conscious spirit and ego together direct, or you could say your conscious ego directs the spiritual light, because they're basically interconnected. You know, that's the tricky part, finding exactly how to describe that in complete, precise detail, how they work together. It is a little bit confusing. I'm not trying to confuse you deliberately. I'm just trying to do the best I can to share this knowledge I have so far. But that conscious ego directs the spiritual light or focus awareness to what your ego, what the will demands, what you want to be doing. All this happens in your mind. It has to happen in your mind first before your body can do anything. Like even with a reflex, a train's coming and then you have to jump back, there's still a mental process that happens there first, or you're getting hit on the knee with that little hammer to get that reflex. Is still a mental signal, whether it's volitional or deterministic. It happens in the mind first. All the aspects of you connected and synthesized are the soul. That's how I'm describing it at any rate. So when looking at the void space that people experience and they share in their testimonies, perhaps that could be ontologically classified as the primary mind space, the layer of reality where spirit originates from, perhaps. Even if if it's a personal or a public space, you could say that is the primary mind space, if that is correct, and that's how it actually works. I mean, I would prefer it to be an individual, completely personal zone rather than a collective, public, shared zone, because then you have your privacy, your peace, your individual presence, and then if you want company, then you come into a world like this, or the astral realms, the different dimensions. Spirit appears to be the bright illuminator in the dark void. Close your eyes, be inside your mind. It's dark. When you imagine something, you bring it to life with light. And sometimes what can happen, I don't know if you've experienced this, but you can actually jump into some kind of proper aware experience like this. Sometimes I accidentally do it, and it's only for a short while. I'll be lying there, eyes closed, and then it's like I can see the wall. I don't know if it's actually this wall, or I can see a room, I can see something, and I'm like, huh? But then I'll like snap out of it really quick, and I'm like, oh, that was weird. Like I didn't consciously will that into being, that just happened. My eyes are closed, and now I'm seeing a room as clear as I'm seeing it right now, but it's only like that, or maybe like that, 1 second. You're like, whoa, what the hell? That's strange. Other times I've had that experience where I'm seeing a room, but it's almost like a light DMT cross or combined with an AI picture of what a room would be. If you asked an AI to draw a picture of what a DMT room would be, I've seen that too. It's like, that's weird. How does that work? But it's like, perhaps that's coming from spirit as this illuminator, and it could be linked into why the Illuminati call themselves the Illuminati, because they believe they're the illuminated ones. They are the spirits, or could be lots of reasons why they call themselves that. But you could say, yeah, the spirit is the illuminator in the dark void, the being in the environment, the light and the dark, the presence in the mindscape. How the light shines and what it forms in the mind or the field or the void is determined by the ego. or can be determined by the ego. Maybe that's more precise, because sometimes stuff just happens to you, or subconsciously, or you might even say it's still the ego, but it's a subconscious or unconscious part of your ego, not your direct conscious spiritual will. The spirit shines the light, the ego directs it. The spirit is aware, the ego directs its focus to what it wants to be aware of. Spirit emits awareness, ego directs awareness. The mind is the medium, like water is the medium for fish and air is the medium for us. Mind space is the medium for spirit. That's what it seems to be. There's a mutual necessity there. The dark provides space for illumination. The light reveals the dark's potential. To see the stars, you need the night. To see the trees, you need the day. Isn't that interesting? For the light to see and illuminate, it needs somewhere and something to illuminate and see. Without the light, there's nothing to see. Nothing can be known without a knower. For one to know anything, they need to see the contents of that knowledge. That's why AI only knows what it's been programmed to know whenever it comes across something that's wrong. Flat Earth, for example. It can't know because there's no knower there. There's no ability to fact check, to deduce, induce, to check the world, to actually observe and think and learn. It doesn't have that ability. Can it ever? I'm not sure. But right now it definitely doesn't. No matter how good your arguments are, you cannot change its mind because it doesn't have a mind. It's artificial, it's pretending. Well, it's not really pretending. They don't tell you, hey, I'm pretending to have a mind. It says, no, I don't have desires, I don't have feelings, I don't think like you. It does tell you that, but it's a simulated copy. And they're open and honest with that, so that's fair. So I think what a real ego does is we have the ability to self-modulate. Well, I mean, that's more getting into psychology and MPJs, change and grow, transform and expand, adapt and learn, modify and integrate. That is what we can do, but that's not so specific to what ego actually is. Oh, man, there was a lot there. I hope you actually learned something from this video. I felt like I wanted to share that, get that off my chest, and hopefully get your feedback. I want you to take these ideas away and share your discoveries with me. Write in the comments, send me a message. Or even if you don't, you just think about it, maybe it can change your life for the better. Sharing my method of discerning reality. Being rational, being objective, but very open at the same time. Going through like a dialectic process. Looking at what's right, what's wrong, or just looking at what could be. Whether maybe everything I've said here is wrong, but that's fine because that helps you get one step closer to what actually is right. So in this video, I spoke about spirit as the presence, as that illuminator of awareness, that directed focused light, focus of scope and intensity. The ego can control it like a joystick, like a computer mouse, like an Xbox controller, can direct where that focus goes to see the ego as that character, that psyche, that personality, the intellectual and emotional side, conscious, subconscious, this whole big thing, what you are as a pattern, as a code, a system. The soul being the whole integrator, which encompasses it and keeps it all together, a container. And in the future videos, I'm going to be talking more about consciousness, determinism, free will, how they all interact back to these topics right here. And MPJs as well. I think they're going to be crucial. Metaphysical, psychological judgments of status and self. MPJs. Yeah, that sounds cool. I like that little acronym. I came up with that today. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. All right. Bye-bye.